Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me back again. I always look forward to joining you guys and sharing wherever I am. It feels like it's a yearly reflection for me. Um, and I loved that story, and Katie's voice reading it was so sweet. So thank you. That was beautiful. Um, I'm going to share with you some of my poetry today. That's one thing that helped me get through the COVID year, was going through all of my stacks of poems and refining and revising, and ended up with a book that's going to get published. So I wanted to share this work in progress with you and the practices that go along with the creating of the poems. Because my spiritual life is very simple. So walking is a place where I feel like I'm being spiritual. So this poem is based on the simple practice of thinking with each step, where am I going? How am I moving away from mind craziness to connection? So you can do the same thing as you go on walks, just from one step to the next. So this is called simple walking meditation. From one step to the next, I go from not awake to awake. From one breath to the next, I go from empty and alone to full and with. From one thought to the next, I go from I have failed to such beauty. I find walking makes my mind quiet. Sometimes it takes me a good 40 minutes of walking before that happens. So at St. Mary of the Woods, where I am an adjunct teacher, there are some hermitages you can rent along a little lake called St. Joseph's Lake. And I went there one spring, and I noticed it took me a whole week to really figure out what it's like to slow down. But by the end of the week, I felt so slow I could see little frogs in the pond. And this poem came from that practice of trying to just slow down. It's called At St. Joseph's Lake in April. It's another walking meditation. 6 turtles sun themselves on a log in the lake. Breath and a slight turn of the head. The ballooning song of frogs. Open the throat, and huge sound rolls from small bodies. Trees sway in the wind, and the wind plays their reflections. Vibrating strings, marbled paper. The wind itself, vibrations of sun warmth, sea currents, earth spin, nothing forced, residing in stillness, carried along. The turkey vulture, looping in swift circles, isn't moving, just holds still and lets the wind carry it. Even the geese swimming by push only enough to allow the lake's gentlest waves to carry them forward. Everything is carried. Everything is supported. Everything makes the least effort in its body and is set free. Set free. Yeah, we're always going, 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 going. And so seeing how nothing in nature actually pushes itself very hard was quite illuminating to me. I also think of driving as a meditation time. I have a nice 26-mile one-way commute back and forth to eating disorder clinic where I work, sometimes in rush hour traffic. I listen to audiobooks. I try to practice compassion for the other drivers on the road. So So this one came while I was listening to an audiobook on the way home. I just called it Commute Home. I have several driving poems, so think of driving as a place to write poetry. Daniel in his book would get that right away, but as adults, we forget it. So writing poetry while you drive, commute home. The audiobook is talking about the disappointment of the early Christians, waiting and waiting for the transformation they believed would happen in their lifetime, until they grew to find eternity and salvation inside the waiting, as waiting changed them, teaching them to love each other. A livestock semi-trailer is slowly passing me. Pushed into each oval air hole, black and white fur of cows packed in for a long journey. From one of these holes, a single velvet cow ear flapping in the winter air. I long to reach out and touch its softness. I feel such tenderness for these animals and their life of sacrifice. I arrive home, less disappointed in marriage, practicing the faith born from knowing we fail failed and fail and will fail, yet continue to choose a forgiving love with which we redeem each other. I'm always looking for those little things on the road that just change my heart. This one is just called Driving Mantra. And it came from the practice of thinking what I would put on a billboard if I could put some message to people on a billboard. There's the Indiana Arts Commission has the art by artists up on billboards around the city. And I always think, why can't poets be up on the billboards? But trying to find something that's in such few words that you can read it and not have an accident while you go passing the billboard is a challenge. So this is what I came up with. I call it Driving Mantra. In every car, someone like me, hurrying to work, hurrying home. We arrive where we need to be as soon as we help each other. We arrive where we need to be as soon as we help each other. So spending time in my outdoor garden is another spiritual practice. And I say garden loosely because I'm not a very good gardener. I can plant things, but I don't do very good at weeding. And it ends up being kind of a haphazard, whatever grows wildly is best in my garden. But I do like to go out to my little screen porch and lie on a cot in the middle of the day and just rest out there. And or look out the window at the garden. So this one, Sparrows and Dandelions, comes from the practice of looking out the window on a rainy morning, kind of like today. You might actually see this right around this time. 3 brown sparrows and many dandelions gone to seed, wet with rain. Simple things, known all my life, like shoestrings and crackers. Yet life half over, I just now see sparrows eat dandelion seeds. These 3 flutter onto pliant stalks to bend damp-haired heads to the grass, beaks swallowing dewy fluff, a morning's feast. I now see finally these lives are linked. How little I know about all the little things I think I know. Every little relationship, every little thing in relationship with every other thing. In right here with these small birds, and these wildflowers. You don't have to be John Muir in Yosemite to see everything is hitched to everything else. Just looking out your kitchen window. I think of cooking as a spiritual practice. I love to cook. I love to gather the ingredients. I love to make things just improvisationally, throwing stuff together. And this poem came while I was cooking soup, which is my favorite winter concoction. I was having a conversation with what I call the beloved. That's my idea of God, is a beloved, mysterious beloved. And I was putting salt in the soup. So it's called The Grain of Salt in the Soup. I love you now, beloved, like a grain of salt dissolving in broth, like a grain of salt in a kettle where water and sky, beans and garlic, spices and galaxies are all simmering, melding together, melting into the stew of stews, the star-salted universe, my flavor joining all flavors, brewing the whole of you. This love softens me out of aloneness into belonging. I am salt, sea, sun, and you are the cook stirring this broth. Cook me, stir me in, swirl me out, and melt me until I am so lost in you that salt and kettle are one, are no thing, without limit or scale, only melting, spinning, falling into this most nourishing love of all. Writing is a spiritual practice. Sometimes I walk around thinking, what are the most important words to me? Like words that have taught me the deepest truths. So that could be another practice that you could do. Just decide for you, what are the most sacred words in your life? So this little poem came from my list of sacred words. Let's gather the most sacred words and write them in sacred places. Heal, give, share, on pebbles scattered on our paths. Hearth, earth, art, in sandstone caves and sun-warmed canyons. Live, love, now, we, on all our hands, reaching out to touch. Belonging, deep inside every cell. Home, welcome, yes. On the leaves of this tree, growing where you were born. See, this is the longest of the poems I'm going to share today. And the longest of the spiritual practices I'm going to suggest you try to do. The practice is to try writing a memoir. That's a long, painful process. Worth it, but challenging. And then take the memoir and see if you can cut it down to 200 words. So here's a poem about what happened when I did that. called Zen and the Art of Writing Memoir. I start to write my life story. I say, my story is worthy of attention. Look at how hard I've worked, the people I've helped, struggles I've had, pain overcome, my sacrificing, doing without. The world is better because of me. I write about childhood, parents, loves, losses, beliefs, choices. Surely the identity I work so hard to claim is more than lifeboat, fortress, safe armor. Months spent writing. Yet who I am or what my life is for eludes me. 20,000 words. Reading them bores me. And inner voice guides cut half. Find what is essential. The story grows clearer, 10,000 words erased. Cut half again, the inner voice insists. At 5,000 words, it's getting interesting. 3, maybe 2 core questions. Down to 2,000 words, sloughing off skins, dead meaning, complex network of memory distilled to essence. The story shrinks to 500, 300, then 200 words, until I admit most has been a long, crazy distraction, asking, how do I escape suffering? Which shortens to, why do I suffer? Which shortens to, do I suffer? Laughing inwardly, something answers, no, and begins to live without the I. Each footstep, each breath, waking. I'll do 3 more poems because I know it's a lot to hear a lot of poems in a row. So I try to do a sitting meditation practice periodically. And I've learned to be compassionate toward myself. Most of what sitting practice is hearing the craziness in my head and getting it to calm down. Sometimes I get sleepy. So this was a little poem that came because of a sleepy sitting practice. I called it Sleepy Sitting Practice. And another conversation with the beloved. Sleepy sitting practice. Today, no great awakening. I napped. The cranky child, the weary woman on a crowded flight, my head nodding accidentally onto your shoulder, beloved. You let it stay there. You let me rest. So paying attention to my dreams is another spiritual practice for me. And every once in a while, frequently I will dream that there are poems in the dreams, but I wake up and I can't remember the poems. And they're usually pretty profound poems that I wish I could remember when I wake up, like The Secret of Life. Every once in a while, I'll actually remember the words in the poems in the dream. So this was one of those very rare occasions. And I titled it with a quote from Carl Jung, who says, God enters through the wound. And to be honest, I still am trying to understand what this dream poem is trying to teach me. So I'm sharing it with you. So if you have some like ahas, please let me know. I think it's true, but it's complicated. So my dream poem says, the wound is here before the injury. The healing is here before the wound. The healing creates the wound. which desires the injury, so we can learn to participate with the healing. I'll do that one again because that one is just little. The wound is here before the injury. The healing is here before the wound. The healing creates the wound, which desires the injury, so that we can learn to participate with the healing. Okay, and my last poem I want to share is about the spiritual practice of healing. I am a flawed human being who's made mistakes and has hurt myself and others, so I'm always in a state of healing. And I take that as the most important spiritual practice of all, is doing that healing work. And this poem came kind of in response to the political world and the COVID world and all that we've been through in the past years, but how I've tried to live through it as a person in the midst of healing. We call it Prayer for Choosing to Soften, and this will be the last one I share. At best, we will need therapy and meditation practice for the rest of our lives. And some of us will soften and begin to heal. And some will keep resisting, afraid to be other than alone behind walls. And the world goes on, as it always has and always will, warring more wherever we resist, and warring less wherever we soften. Sometimes we feel like fools. We could be getting drunk and screwing around in opulent burning fortresses instead of sitting here humbly becoming naked. But the love we seek needs us to live in the wound like maggots cleansing an open sore of infection, like bees finding pollen to make honey, like mystics waking in the heart of the cosmic rose, realizing what we called self was a simple portal, a crudely carpentered door, which we are quietly passing through, beyond which compassion is forever opening. So poetry as spiritual practice can be found, like in the book we heard, Daniel, everywhere you go. So I hope these poems inspire you to take on some simple practices while you're walking, driving, cooking, gardening, sitting, and healing. Thank you for allowing me to share these with you.